Hey YouTube, Doug Wallman here. I'm trying something a little new, although I don't want it to be the main subject of my video. The first geek out thing I'll mention is I'm using, for the first time, this EM Primo 2M72 clippy microphone from micbooster.com. I've used the EM272 before in a different format, like the one you just plug in directly to your camera, but this one actually has an XLR end like that. This one here is mono that I'm wearing. I have a stereo pair for I guess ASMR or any other type of stereo environment where I want to capture maybe birds outside or nature. So I'm just kind of experimenting. I've actually had this for probably over half a year and didn't even open it up. I finally opened it up yesterday. So just curious how it sounds to have a lavalier microphone like this plugged into my audio interface. If I wanted to, I could get it even fancier and plug it into some of my tube preamps and stuff, one with compression or whatever. But I thought I'd give this a shot here. So I guess the name of my video is When the Day is Full of Life but You Still Have Nothing to Talk About. It kind of felt like a pretty good day. I was just kind of working along with my coworker. He always had something to say. He's from a different country, so I had to kind of listen closely, but but there's always good things going on. Sometimes there's people share their stories, and sometimes there's painful things. That wasn't him, but there's just stuff that happens throughout the day. I do my best to listen and keep out of people's business if that's what I need to do. But I find people are more or less pretty inviting. I wasn't sure where this video was going. It's just kind of maybe what guys experience, is just not knowing where to take their conversation. You know what I mean? If you have one, you can always keep on subject without someone else is talking about, ask questions back, get feedback or whatever, initiate a conversation and let a couple other people take it from there. But I'm on my own here on YouTube, which makes it kind of interesting. I love the fact that I have control of the conversation though, but I have nowhere to take it, it feels like, unless I get into deep philosophical nuances here with, poetry or Simone Weil. I've gotten a little bit into some of her work, but it was more just on that one poem that I liked, her journal entry, An Encounter. I really liked that. I have read through some of her book a little bit. This one right here. Simone Weil. I can't read it though. Selected works. So I don't know if I'd really want to get into that for my video. I just wanted to have kind of a nice little chit chat without getting necessarily too deep, unless I had something honestly led me there that was organic, which I'm not really feeling it right now, to be honest. But I do appreciate the day I had. Let's say I was coming home to a wife or something. I don't know what I'd say. I'd probably say some of the things I probably wouldn't mention on YouTube. There's always somebody on their motorcycle. Every time I try to do a video, it seems like there's interruptions in this neighborhood. It's kind of annoying. Maybe I'll start over. Maybe I will. But I'm also kind of experimenting. Maybe I'll just keep the video. I'm also kind of experimenting with that lens, because when I did my ASMR video, which is doing pretty good, I think, I noticed it wasn't tracking on my face very well. but it's not the lens. I think it was my lighting, trying to be all ambient with my light. I think I had it too dim, and therefore it couldn't track, because it's tracking pretty good right now, I think. So I'm just kind of experimenting. I had a little worry there that maybe the lens wasn't in good shape or something, but it seems to be doing fine. You just have to give it the right lighting so it knows where your face even is. I wish it could kind of track with my face and ambient light a little better when I'm doing more of a vibey presentation, but apparently I need to have a little more light. Yes, I'm using my Canon D5 Mark IV. It's my older camera, but I discovered I really like how that looks, and it has a very nice appearance, I think. I noticed it must have a slightly different format, because there's two black bars on both top and bottom. I could kind of stretch it out if I wanted to in post, but I think we'll just leave it. I must have different dimensions or something. And when I used to use that camera all the time, I hardly ever shot it in 4K. And I noticed yesterday when I was using it, it would quit on me. So I'm also kind of experimenting with that just to see what's up, and to see if it can keep recording. So I guess this recording is kind of an experiment too, both in technology and in my thought processes with communicating with my subscribers. Hope you all liked the ASMR I did yesterday. I was a little bit out of practice, yet I thought I did good as far as the sounds. My presentation might have been a little off. With that one camera, I always have the back screen, whatever that's called, a flip screen to look at. And then I find myself always looking at it to see if it's tracking with me and stuff, and always trying to check out if it's doing what it's supposed to. Of course, with this Canon 5D Mark IV, it doesn't have that option. So when I'm looking at the camera, I'm actually looking at the lens. The only way I have to monitor it is either like an iPhone, or you could do it on your laptop too. But what are good things for guys to discuss after they've had their full day of work? I mean, you don't want to really bring up work issues so much. Maybe sometimes you could. Well, it's just kind of the ordinary day. I soldered all day long and assembled, as both. Yeah, I'm kind of hungry now. I probably need to end the video and go get a bite to eat, and then we do the same thing all over again, and it's going to be a Friday. I do find that life is good, but yet having a discussion. I know some people are right on topic with their Facebook posts. It's always about the same thing over and over again, whether it be, I mean, it's pretty predictable depending on the person. Ever kind of notice that? Everyone's kind of got their theme in life. Lately, mine's kind of been on the perichoresis, Dr. C. Baxter Kruger type thing. Been doing a few of those, but I discovered also, though, that if I'm going to be talking about perichoresis, and if I understand right without even looking what it is, it would mean the dynamic that there is in a relationship. In this case, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but really I think you could broaden it to the whole human race. The dynamic that exists when you maintain your own, and maintain's probably not the right word, but you're discovering, I almost could have used the word achieve, but let's cross off the word achieve. You're discovering the dynamic of having your own autonomy while being one. I would say within a marriage situation, but really there's different ways to be one. I think it isn't all a matter of maybe that level of intimacy, right? But just relationships in general among us all, discovering how not to lose ourselves in someone or have someone lose himself in us, and that's the reason they're leaving, right? Because I've heard that kind of thing before. They get lost in an enmeshment. Enmeshment, is that the right word? It is enmeshment. I think I've finally learned how to pronounce that. And I think that's part of the reason I didn't consciously seek this out, perichoresis, but I think I knew something was up when I listened, because there's just when I listened to Dr. C. Baxter Kruger, I just discovered there was story after story kind of had some resonation to him, even when he was driving this old Honda Accord that was given to him. I mean, it probably wasn't super old. I forget what year it was when he was describing the story, but it had been given to him, and he was at a stoplight, and there was this lady beside him, and she kind of gave him a look right before she took off, and that kind of set him off. Then when he went inside the house where his family was hanging out and his wife was cooking, I think supper, it's he was acting kind of defensive or whatever, or just wasn't himself. What's going on? Nothing. And he left, and I think he took a drive or something. His I don't know, his self-esteem or something was totally shattered just by that one small event. I think basically the lady is kind of rolling her eyes at what he was driving, or he was perceiving that through his own lens and self-perception, kind of paint things based on our perception. And it might have been, an accurate depiction of what was going on, or it could have been painted even further or something. You know how that is when you're kind of triggered by something as tiny and insignificant as that, or petty or whatever. I could kind of feel maybe some ways of being triggered by the smallest things. That's just one example among many stories he gave, and it wasn't all based on your perception per se of how you paint the world or how you project, but he just had lots of relatables in his story, ways of looking at life, ways of kind of philosophizing without philosophizing. Because really, if you think about it, if someone handles their theology correctly, if you get into theology in a certain way, there's kind of embedded within it a certain philosophy. So I just found it really interesting. Plus there's all kinds of life and dynamically rich conversation. I've listened to tons of him speaking at church, podcast type engagements with other people where it's more one-on-one, or in the case of a church it would be, of course, a whole congregation. Then that led me, because of his whole Trinitarian stance on things, and plus he has a totally different stance on retribution, punitive type theology. I forget exactly the right word right now, but basically the main difference with his theology is that the Father wasn't punishing the Son in order to pay for our sins. It was really something different than him acting out on his Son. I think I resonate with that. Definitely needs to be looked at in any case. He would say, and I don't know how to condense it down to one sentence per se. I think he could. But Jesus, instead of sinners in the hands of an angry God, it was God in the hands of angry sinners. And just the whole... So then I got to thinking, well, so if you pull on the scarlet thread of this Trinitarian theology, where would it lead you? So I got to see some videos of people who are no longer in mainstream they're not in institutional churches, let's put it that way. Or if they are, they feel like they're there for the moment, but they're not. They don't want to really. They want to be supportive and cooperative, but there's also sort of a subversive element. They're subverting the institution. Because basically what I heard in this one podcast, there was like several people. Some had totally left the institutional church, but one pastor had remained, but he'll only remain as long as he doesn't become like fearful, because that's his pay, that's his livelihood in a sense, but he doesn't want. It's kind of hard to explain. I have to revisit the video, but there are some really good points, because when you become institutionalized in that setting, it's almost inevitable there's going to be abuse, people being used, just like a corporate dynamic, okay? Whether it's religious or not, there comes along the corporate dynamics that just, it is what it is, you know what I mean? It's a likely scenario how that unfolds. There has to be lots of intention not to let it go a certain direction, which would lead to a toxic environment, for example, or people being mistreated, things like that. All right, so I wanted to interject in my video because listening in post-production, I discovered I missed a couple things. I did not want to elaborate a lot and get into the weeds on this, but as far as the Unitarian thing and Baxter Kruger, I really appreciated one thing he said. Now here's one thing that's a little more provocative first before I share the thing I actually intended to share. It says, one revelation of the glory of Jesus Christ in a daisy is more powerful than 1,000 American sermons. I did hear him say that in a video, and I don't know if he was referencing someone else who had said that or if that's his own off the cuff. I thought, wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I haven't ever heard a good sermon. Even locally, there's awesome. I don't want to kick my local pastor under the bus or anything like that. I'm just saying a wide spectrum, wide bird's eye view of everything that I've maybe at one point been so excited about. And when you get older, you're kind of where was I in that whole thing? I bought the posters and the tapes. Back then it actually was cassette tapes and everything. And then later you find out some of the character issues involved in more of the mega ministry type people. I'm not speaking locally, okay? But this is the thing I actually wanted to bring up that he said. I personally wish that we would hang a sign above every church in the United States of America that says, "You shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free." We believe Jesus is the truth, but we don't know how that sets us free yet. Walk with us to find out. Dr. C. Baxter Kruger. That's another excerpt I kind of transcribed from a video. I don't think you'll find that quote anywhere, but I appreciated that one. The other thing I've heard him say quite a bit, so I'm led down this doctrinal, more of theological road. It's a little different because, well, it's probably not different. It's probably actually more normal, but it's different than our traditional. And I'm putting traditional in quotes because it's really more recent, perhaps, in the last, I don't know how many years, 300-400 years maybe. We've come to believe in this this atonement theory of what's the right word? I should have made notes on that too. The propitiation, it's more to do with God punishing his son in order to pay for our sins, as opposed to the Trinitarian doctrine that Baxter is more than proposing, really. that Jesus is meeting us inside our delusion, and it was God in the hands of angry sinners, literally, instead of sinners in the hands of an angry God. But I'm not really getting into the philosophy of that. But I was trying to tell you is, okay, so we're pulling on the scarlet thread of this whole thing. Where would this lead me? Like, what church would I go to, right? Not that I'm changing churches. I'm not really thinking of doing that. I was maybe thinking if there was a church I would visit. But let me interject here. Correction, kind of making it sound like I'm veering off in one direction. I kind of knew better that there would be such a church. You know why? Because when I listened to Baxter, he said, God forbid we start a whole new franchise and end up just like the other churches where it's just this big conglomerate, and it's just almost like a corporate managed thing. That's what he wants to avoid. That's part of the whole thing. Now, I know these guys visit churches. I know they speak at churches. So there is that sort of to contend with a little bit. Where would they have to go if it wasn't for them visiting a church? And so there's that whole thing to contend with. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up real quick. And this is a quote by George MacDonald, actually, but Baxter quotes it. George MacDonald, I think, is like from the 1800s. I think he's like a theologian. He's obviously within the same vein of this. Good souls many will one day be horrified at the things they now believe of God. If they have not thought about them, but given themselves to obedience, they may not have done them much harm as yet. But they can make little progress in the knowledge of God, while if but passively holding evil things true of him. If on the other hand they do not think about them and find in them no obstruction, they must indeed be far from anything to be called the true knowledge of God. But there are those who find them a terrible obstruction, and yet imagine, or at least fear them true. Such must take courage to forsake the false in any shape, to deny their old selves in the most seemingly sacred of prejudices, and follow Jesus, not as he is presented in the tradition of the elders, but as he is presented by himself, his apostles, and the Spirit of truth. There are, quote-unquote, traditions of men after Christ as well as before him, and far worse as, quote-unquote, making of none effect, higher and better things, and we have to look to it how we have learned Christ. George MacDonald, from Self-Denial from Unspoken Sermons. The basic gist there, though, that I've heard Baxter quote wasn't that whole paragraph. It was just, good souls many will one day be horrified at the things they now believe of God. And that was just food for thought there. Actually a little bit more than that, but I don't want to go beyond your ability to facilitate the thought or take it in or absorb it. So I'm thinking of another word, but obviously it didn't come to me. Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and let this be my little interjection, which probably lasted quite a long time. We'll get back to the video as it was. Thanks for listening to that part, though, too. It's not saying I'm thinking about leaving my church or anything like that, but I am kind of aware, just keeping my eyes open and listening to what people have to say. Just kind of how the American church especially, or the church in the West, has lended itself to unhealthy situations, and now we're just now beginning to see some of the nasty outcomes, and people are being exposed, and just the truth is coming out. But I didn't really want to head down that rabbit trail and stay there too long. It's just interesting to note. I wanted to actually listen to that video more intently and take notes. And I also I've come across another video, so maybe I should think about doing this. Well, this guy, this is a separate video. He was talking about what he noticed in church. Maybe I'll link both the videos I'm talking about. He had decided to leave, and he noticed people's quote-unquote concerns or whatever was kind of based on this self-righteousness that was in the way he presented it, but it wasn't really founded on true righteousness from God, but sort of the society, the subculture, whatever, within that organization kind of just held him to a certain standard that was actually not the same as God's standard or even a biblical standard. And I know that people will always refer to the one verse, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. I'm not really in a place right now to really bring out the truth of what was spoken, because I can't remember everything he said and regurgitate it back to you, to be fair. So I'm not presenting my best case, but I don't really have a case that I'm presenting because I'm not really looking at leaving. But I like to develop the language that some of these people do have, because it's good to have your self-advocacy intact and not fall prey to many things that can happen if you're just a doormat, or if you're a little too willing just to pour yourself out, because I've heard that. I mean, we want to be submissive and to do the things that God has, quote unquote, called us to do. I think that's a bit of a misnomer too. So he called us unto himself, but I feel like my whole framework's kind of being messed with, but I still don't have the language to really have a good conversation with my subscribers on this. But I'll refer you to a video, and I thought it was two of them, and I thought it was a good conversation. Anyway, besides that, I think life is good, and we are going forward with momentum, even though every day is a gift, okay, and there's lots of things to learn in each and every day, but I'm not always, I try to be aware of stuff, but there's a point where you're actually better off operating in some just natural, organic state, just be fluid with the movements of life. If you're always trying to figure out self-development and improvement, or even God and how all that's working, it can be a little bit artificial in some ways, because whether or not you're really trying to, even if you're trying to make it organic, there's still kind of a push for that. So even within that, I'm thinking, okay, so do I want to pull out a dating app and go that route if I want to find my quote unquote perfect match, or do I just want to wait and do the organic thing? Because I know some people have been matched up and they did use the dating app, but I also know I've done that and I've met some cool people and stuff, but there's just questions like that. And at any moment I could, the switch could flip in my head and I could go down that road. But so far, I've done it in the past, but it's been probably, I'm thinking a little over a year now. I'm just like, nope. I have actually, I think, registered on one of those and then just didn't go all the way through to complete it in the, I might have completed it, but I didn't actually pay the fee. So now they're always trying to tease me with emails to give me special offers, and I just kind of keep shrugging it off. There's kind of holding that tension between, I could do that, or I could just wait and see if anything organic develops. Right now, it feels like it's a good thing to wait. I could be wrong though, but that's what I'm feeling at the moment. Because it just feels like it's really kind of a risky move to put yourself out there. You could waste a lot of time in a relationship that doesn't work out, or I don't know. But what else? I feel like I'm in an environment where people really complain a lot. Sometimes they do have things to complain about. Sometimes I think it goes overboard. So it's kind of draining sometimes. It's like, I've got to give this example. Today, a lady brought her own plate to the company. It's not a potluck, but it's like a company dinner. They furnished the food. Someone catered it. Actually, the people in the office and the uppity people, management, people like that were actually serving us. And I thought it was actually pretty good. There's always somebody that manages to complain. And there's no better way to like reject the hospitality at hand, but to bring your own paper plate. It's like, seriously? I just thought that was funny. Kind of pathetic, but also kind of funny. And the really big guy, like the guy that's in charge of everything pretty much, he was like trying to make her smile. He had tongs and he's like doing this with the tongs. Oh, I got a smile out of you, because the lady kind of has an unhappy demeanor sometimes, or she's got the goods on everything type of an attitude. But I just thought that was funny that he managed to do that. Someone in charge is trying to make someone laugh and smile, and he's got the tongs, and he's like, I've never really seen him like that, because he does seem semi-jolly, but there's the side that I see most of him is more of the serious, I guess. Although, yeah, he can be funny, but this conversation really isn't going anywhere, but it's 25 minutes, and I don't know, I love these David Tenson books, poetry. But I don't know if any of that, enough words. I don't think I've already read that one. We're not going to really talk about anything totally heavy. A lot of this stuff is heavy, but if you are in the mood for some almost melancholy poetry that kind of holds within it the theme of how life really is. So I wrote you a poem by David Tenson, and I have another one of his books over here. The Wrestle. My Story. So I will maybe read that, then we'll end it out. And it's still recording. My story. This is my story, with its sharp edges, dark corners, secret passageways, and remnant bones and closets. This is my story, with its high lofts and dark basements. I fell and flew into so many times. This is my story, built by bodies, measured by masses, colored by crowds, renovated by bearers of good news. What is your story? Tell me of the tales that shaped the abode of your soul. Tell me of the times tragedy overstayed and triumph left without warning. Tell me of the days courage cooked you breakfast and grief kept the kettle on. Tell me how you managed to stop the dark nights from giving you stars to navigate by. Tell me where you found the strength to forgive those who were as undeserving as you. Tell me your story, for I want to know how your soul story and mine are mysteriously bound by the author of life. Tell me your story. Tell me your story. Tell me your story. That's pretty cool. I don't think I read that with the best inflection that time, but I was looking down and see that. I'm pretty sure this camera will stop at 29 minutes and 50 seconds, so I kind of felt like I was in a hurry to wrap up the poetry and end my video. Hope you all enjoyed my little discussion that didn't really lead to much of anywhere, but it's kind of an exercise in kind of loosening my tongue, getting my heart to open up and just talk, even though it may not be like a very specific theme. There's kind of the theme of, yes, we know there's stuff wrong in this world, in the institutions, in our own personal life or lives, but what's your story and how can you relate it? And I encourage anyone who wants to get out there and share their story to do so. I'd love to hear it. So that being said, I know there's many channels that kind of do, well, only a few that I actually like, but I'm discovering more and more. So I hope I can discover your channel and that you are in a place where you can share from your heart. And if as you've watched me try to convey some of that, you can do the same. So with that, I'll end the video and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.